Okay, this is episode 35 of Counterpoints. And I'm the usual host, Thorin. Oh, wait, something about Boomeo. They have guides there. They have guides, including from a former Team Liquid player. They have Hiko there. Still got the Liquid jersey on because that's how quickly NA changes things around. Been in another team since then, but that's NA for you, Moses. And speaking of people who used to be on Team Liquid, the guest for this one, because I already just said the word Moses, so that's your introduction. The guest for this episode is Pimp, again, formerly of Team Liquid. I'll just keep repeating that.
Wearing his Hummel jersey.
Yes. So, Pimp, I've actually got an opening question for you, which is, you actually did analysis at an event recently. You were in tours for DreamHack, right?
Yep.
So every player I know who's never done analysis is like, oh, that's so easy. Like, if I was doing that, so like just the easiest job ever. What did you actually think of it? What was it like compared to...
Well, I already did gain a little bit of respect before I did the event. I sort of knew what I was going into, so I did respect you guys before. But honestly, I didn't expect it to be that exhausting. It was like we went to the event as the first guys come in every morning at 9. And we were the last one to leave every day. And it was like a rapid 12, 13 hours someday of work. And at least if you take it seriously, I believe you have to like stay focused for 12 hours in a row almost. Like you have to watch the games, you have to take notes, you have to pay attention to all the games and all the small details in order to deliver on the desk. So to me it was very like exhausting for my mind. Obviously not physical because you are sitting in a chair and you are watching games. That's it. But it's hard for your mind, and then I didn't get a lot of sleep. So I didn't expect it to be that hard, but on the other way around, like it was interesting and it was challenging.
Okay, so obviously the reason why you had space to do the analysis was due to the fact that you are technically like benched in Team Liquid, but obviously not playing in the team. And we'll just leave the technicalities of that aside. not actually as interesting as it sounds, but as a result, we want to know some things about the time you're in Team Liquid. Now, I know you're probably thinking like, whoa, listen, Team Liquid's a great organization. Again, I am on the bench officially. They are close personal friends of mine. But sadly, you couldn't even reveal that much. That's crazy anyway, because fucking Hiko already spilled his guts all over everywhere, didn't he? What's that all about? Like, think about all the times. He's exactly the sort of person like, yeah, I'll tell you this, but I don't want to mention it in an interview. Then he just goes and says it all for free on his stream. What's it all about?
I don't know.
So here's the first question we've got to ask Pimp. I actually would like to know, what was it like to work with a coach? Because as far as I know in your career, did you actually ever have a coach like an SK? I don't think Ruggle was there in Dignitas, right?
Nope, never. Luis Peacemaker was my first coach ever.
What was it like then to work with Peacemaker and then a little bit of Zeus?
I found it very challenging in the beginning, and I'm not sure whatever that comes down to. That was the first time working with a coach. I've never been used to being coached before, so I said like Peacemaker was the first one, and as I already like stated in the interview we did, the one-on-one thing. We had some difficulties and we didn't agree on a lot of stuff. Me coming from Europe, him coming from Brazil, and being a part of the NA scene for some time within that. It made us look at the game differently, basically. So we had a few arguments, and we didn't see eye to eye on some stuff, and that was very, I think, hard on both of us because we didn't agree on much actually.
Was that tactically, or is that having to do with like team operation and how it works?
Both, mainly tactically in the beginning. It was sort of like in the beginning, I obviously gave him all the space that he needed, and I was just like sucking into me and like thinking to myself, okay, this is the way we do it in NA, and let's try and see if it works. As it turned out, it didn't work, and we got worse and worse. I like rapidly started to speak my mind more and more, and as I did that, we got into more arguments, and we got into more where we didn't see a thing eye to eye, which caused like some players in the team was on Peacemaker's side, some was on mine side, and it kind of like changed back and forth all the time. The only constant was that Peacemaker and I didn't see the game the same way, basically, whereas he's more like he likes to set a game plan from the beginning, and he likes to follow that strict game plan, and he doesn't fully, at least that back then, didn't understand the adapting mid round, and like a situation can occur in a round, and you have to take that chance, and have to work on that. He never really seemed to understand that, at least in the beginning. So that was like mainly the issues we had, and some of the players on the team were agreeing with me, and some of the players were agreeing with Peacemaker. So we had some internal difficulties in terms of how we wanted to play the game. So that was very rough in the beginning, having a coach like that. It got easier when we got Zeus, and it got easier over time with Peacemaker as well. Like we had a rough start, but I felt like we sort of worked it out. Then some stuff happened between Peacemaker and Liquid, which made them break up, and which made Peacemaker leave the team. We got Zeus, and it got a lot easier. I feel he was more like a coach fitting my style of play and my mind in general. So I have only like positive stuff to say about Zeus, because it felt like he understood how to handle a team, how to motivate a team, how to like he knew the balance between going hard on a player when he needed to hear that he is an idiot, and then he also understood when it was not always necessary to point out a mistake, for an example. So it felt much more fluent, and it felt much more natural to have a coach like Zeus when he got in.
What are the coaches actually like? What do these coaches do? Like when you say that they helped out, was this like, they're watching demos of your opponents, or are they like, figuring out how you guys play the game? You just said Zeus is much more in tune with like the emotional side of things, but are they like building tactics, building structure for the team and certain strategies, or is it a little bit more behind the scenes?
It was two different styles as well. Like Peacemaker was the type that wanted a set tactic, and then he wanted us to like practice that tactic down to the narrow, so we could that. And Peacemaker as well, like watched a lot of demos and tried to be like sort of an coach analysis. He was very good at watching demos, and he worked hard, no doubt about that. He watched a lot of demos, but in the end, he didn't have the ability to get too much out of watching those demos. Like he could locate the problems, but he didn't have the solutions. Whereas Zeus were working in another way, where he was more like he was paying more attention to watching our games, watching our practice scrims, and then pointing out every single mistake we made. And it worked a little bit differently, because Zeus was more like he wanted us to play sort of like SK, I guess, because that's where he came from, and that's how he believes you win. And arguably you could say that's the right way to play right now. SK is amazing and has been for a while. So he wanted us to adapt mid round. He wanted us to understand to mid round call and all that kind of stuff. And he like kept pointing out mistakes, kept pointing out openings. We should have done this and this and this when an opening occurs and all that kind of stuff. So he came with solutions instead of just like locating problems. Whereas Peacemaker was more like the analysis guy who was locating problems but didn't have all the solutions for them. So it was two very different styles of coaching, I'd say.
So one thing that Moses always brings up about coaches, which is an interesting point, is the idea that unlike a coach in sports, for example, a lot of them can't really discipline any of the players, and not even like discipline as in, like they've literally misbehaved and you have to do something, but they don't really even have much authority over the play, Like as much as you're saying, okay, like someone like Peacemaker, maybe he just seemed like he was an analysis guy. If we're being honest, a lot of the coaches out there, now there's no coaching in-game leader aspect, a lot of them that's almost the role that a lot of them have been given. It's like they can do some coaching and they can do tactics and stuff, but like, can they really tell, like, a player, for example, you have to do this role? Can you do, like what is it been like in that respect?
Yeah, again, like I can only speak from the two coaches I've ever had. Peacemaker didn't have the maturity. At least I didn't feel it. He was obviously on the team before I arrived. He was at the major with the guys, so he gained a lot of respect from them from the major, I assume. But he didn't occur to me as a guy who could like tell Elish or tell me to shut the fuck up, focus on the game, and that'll be it. He didn't come in with that like natural aura of maturity, where Zeus for some reason just have that aura around him. It just feels like he has the maturity, and he can, like, for an example, he told me when he arrived to the team, Pimp, you need to commit yourself to be a full support player. If like I know what you can, I know what your skill set is, but this team needs a guy who's willing to sacrifice. This team needs a guy who's willing to take that role, and I need you to do it, and that's it. If you can't accept that, then we have to look at another player. So he came in with that maturity right from the beginning, and it just like I can respect that. I not always agreed with Zeus at all, but I always had like some mutual respect for him in that sense. Whereas with Peacemaker, it just felt different. And in general, for coaches, I agree with what you just brought up. It's like it's so new, and the rules keep changing for the coaches. There's no really set in stone what a coach is and what a coach needs to be on a TS team right now. It's like it's still in the open, and it's still in the making for what fits in.
See, when Zeus said that, when he said, listen, Pimp, I need you to commit to be a full support player, you should have just patched Moses in on the 3-way. He goes, doesn't exist. And then you go, oh, my mistake,
Exactly.
Moses. I only won 2 majors. Yeah. You win, Moses.
I would have helped you. I would have hooked it up. I would have hooked it up.
Okay. And then obviously after that, you know, once he doesn't fully accept Moses' authority, because he did see him pick Cloud down a lot in a lot of events, then we just say, okay, well, what about this then? We'll bring in an ex-pro. So we patch in Sponge. He's like, yeah, doesn't exist as a role. And then what would happen is, obviously Zeus, I get to be Zeus in this, would just go, maybe if there'd been a support player in Renegades, you might have won some games. And they just drop the mic. Like, that would be an end. So what's good is Sponge wasn't even in a real scenario there. He still got burned. And Zeus didn't even really say that. That was me the whole time, Moses. But in your mind, it feels like Zeus got an epic burn off on Sponge. So
you see the
theatre of the mind we're at now, Moses. It's a radio show, you know. I'm actually playing all the parts myself. A one-man show. Okay, so here's the thing, though. I actually feel like that's a really tough area for Counter-Strike in terms of the coaching component, because I know actually the same thing exists in League of Legends, where they actually have like a full coaching system, you know, and every team has a head coach, and some of them have head coach, like assistant coach, all sorts of different, obviously all analysts that are separate. But I know one of the big problems they have is that famously in Korean teams, the coach has like 100% authority. Like he can literally even bench players and like kick them off the team. And here's the thing, while on one level, that is really good because it means you can, like even the star player to some degree has to stay within like a certain bounds. You know, he can never like literally tell people like, I'm going to do what I want and I'm not going to do anything else, you know, where you hear about some of the egos of some players and teams. The problem is though, I worry that like that wouldn't work in the West just culturally, you know? Like, I mean, I know, for example, think about at school. Like, if you're at school, even the teachers don't really literally, like, command you around like that. That's kind of like the old school style, you know? It's not really like how modern day stuff works as much.
One thing I noticed from League of Legends that, what is it? I haven't really noticed it so much in, like, the NA or the EU, but I know when I used to tune into a couple of the Korean games, they actually have, like, a sub, so they could, like, in the middle of a series, they would, like, sub in, like, a different mid laner, right?
They can have a whole bunch, yeah.
Yeah,
and they would do it as well.
Yeah. I think that'd be the interesting thing if that's where like academy teams are going to progress to, is where like a team will have like just one of those players, whoever's performing best on the academy team, be like a sub. And I think it's a great idea considering the schedule that we have. Why not have like a player who's going, like you say, you know, this player on the academy team will get 3 games this season in the pro league, you know, just to give them more experience or bring them in and see what they can do. You know, you look at all those issues where like FaZe, like Hiroshima had to sit out a day of matches because he had some surgery or something like a dentist appointment or something like that. And they had to play with their coach. Maybe instead of that, you're bringing in like an academy player for 2 games. And that's also like a tool that coaches could use to be like, okay, if this guy's not going to adhere to the strategy or he's not doing what I'm telling him to do, you know, have that ability to sub him out. I mean, that's something that can at least help them. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see how that's going to progress moving forward.
But it's always sort of happening. I know Astralis, for example, like Sonic in Astralis is that type of coach, you know, he's the one like, basically, like if he doesn't want Device in his team, he can like go to Astralis and say, I don't want Device in my team, and then like Astralis is listening to coach, you know, to Sonic. Excuse me. Sonic is that middleman between the team and Astralis as an organization, you know, because they want it to be like it is in real sports, where the coach have the authority to basically decide everything.
Wasn't it when they benched Kerrigan, where they put Kerrigan down? Wasn't it like the press release said like Zonic has decided that Kerrigan will no longer be like in the part of the starting lineup, and everyone was kind of like, how much authority does Zonic actually have? Like, is he the one that actually decreed that and it came down from the coach? That's kind of cool, I guess, if you're the coach that has that authority.
As far as I know, like obviously I'm not in the circle of Astralis, but as far as I know, that's how it works. They wanted to look refreshed. That is, I guess, the company behind Astralis and Heroic, because they also hired Fetish recently for Heroic, right? So they want to set it up as the coach having the last word. You know, the players have some sort of say, of course, you know, as in every sports team, but in the end, it's the coach words which matters the most. You know, and that's what they're trying to set up a system like that. So if a player acts out, or if a player gets enough warning and doesn't perform or doesn't put in time, doesn't commit, behaves like an idiot, you name it, then the coach have the authority to say, listen up, this is your chance. You're out of the team now. We're gonna look for another one. That's inevitably the coach's decision and not the players, because we all know, like, and I know from experience, you know, the like stuff and factors like personalities, and I like this player more than I like this player when we're at events and not
it's a
playing,
lot more emotional.
Exactly, it comes in, and players are not and probably will never be mature enough to choose like what's probably best for the team over friends and stuff like that. And that's why I think that's whole like the whole coaching thing is it's it's gonna evolve to that point, and Astralis is probably only the first example, and Heroic for that matter. And I think people are gonna pick it up if that's gonna work out for them, which it seems it does, So.
Well, hopefully in Heroic, then there haven't already been conflicts where obviously Fetish has had to report Snappy because he just said, "Listen, he's not playing my style that I want him to play. He's getting like sometimes 4 or 5 T rounds." It's an old joke. Sadly, he's probably too old for a lot of the viewers of the show.
Dusted it off.
I know I did. It still works. It still works. Pimp. It's still got something to it. Anyone who's around, they know. Easter egg for fans.
Here's a question I have about your time in Team Liquid, because one of the issues that's been like pervasive in the team has been their inability to use and have an impactful opper. Back from when Adren, he was doing the in-game leading and opping, and he has his own issues as a player. And then Kusta coming in, and that was still very new to him. There's a lot of reasons why it might be happening, but now you guys brought in JDM. You spent a lot of time in this lineup. At the time, he was like an incredible opper in CLG. He was like their hard carry. He's probably, when you guys brought him into Liquid, he was probably the best opper in NA. And even I think some people were putting him in like top 5 lists in the world. What is it about this Liquid team that, despite having Peacemaker, despite having Zeus, it still feels like Liquid struggles to find a way to have impact from the opposition?
It's a good question. It's tough to answer. I can only imagine what the problem were with Adrian and Kusta. Like I said, I didn't get to play with them. As far as I know, and as what I've heard, like Kusta, the problem was that he wasn't ready. He wasn't mature enough to take responsibility in order to like actually dictate where he wants to go with his op. And like as an AWPer myself, I've been there, and don't make any sad jokes, Thorin. But I know how
okay.
How tough it can be, because if you don't feel it, if you don't have the confidence, then you're not doing what you know is the right thing to do. It just plays with your mind. So I can imagine, like, if you lose confidence, as Kusta probably did pretty quickly, also playing with Simple, heard some stuff what Simple told Kusta in matches and all that kind of stuff. I can only imagine how hard that has been for him. So what went wrong with Adrian and Kusta, I don't know. I can only guess. As for JDM, I honestly don't know, because I feel Josh was doing everything he could in order to make it work. Like he's a very honest person, and he wants to talk about things. He wants to talk about the problems. He's not like going quiet or just letting the problems like sort them out himself. He's bringing it up if he has a problem, and he did that a few times. He didn't feel he get enough space. He didn't feel he didn't feel comfortable on the team. He felt some other players were hindering him in doing what he wanted to do, and also has to do with Peacemaker when he was the coach. As an AWPer, you want freedom. You want to dictate the round. You want the ability to say, this round I'm going for a peak here and here and here. Whereas with Peacemaker as a coach, we had a set game plan. We had a set strat we had to go. And like he never really got anything going, I guess. I know JDM was praised for his play at the major, but even I watched the major from home. He was playing well at the major. Obviously, they went to the grand final, but it was not like a CLG JDM either. It was like you would always see at the major he was like kind of declining in
didn't seem like
impact,
he had a lot of freedom under
exactly freedom and obviously he had impact because he was playing well, but his impact wasn't as big as it was in CLG. That always like showed at the major. When I was brought onto the team, my perception on it all is that Peacemaker was running it a little bit too strict, and that's like was the main conversations we had about it all. Because Josh was very upset with it, and I was very upset with it as well, because I was used to play with all of us who got the freedom. Who like even when I was opening in Dignitas, despite that was maybe a bad decision, or it was a bad decision, I still got the freedom to do what I wanted. I just didn't take it, Whereas Josh, he wanted to take it, but he couldn't with Peacemaker. So that's probably part of the reason. Not blaming it on Peacemaker at all, because that system could have turned out to work as well. Like you don't have to have an AWPer who's dictating the game. If you have an Elise on your team and you have like Nitro going off, then you might not need JDM to dictate the game. So I can see where Peacemaker came from, but I think he hindered him a lot in terms of giving him freedom and giving him abilities to actually dictate the game.
So what was it that when Zeus came in as the coach? Did you in your time there, did you see any like kind of changes in the ideas of what Zeus was bringing in on how to get JDM more involved, how to get him a little bit more activated in some of these matches?
Yeah, because I feel like Zeus was listening to it. Like obviously he came in with a fresh mind, and JDM saw that, and I saw that for a second chance, because we were both upset with how things have been and how we've been playing and the results and all that kind of stuff. It didn't work out for us. Especially I was upset. I we said it many times, but I left family, friends, and all that kind of stuff. And I really did have high expectations for when I arrived in Liquid. I really thought that, okay, this is going to be a team that is going to like cause damage in the world, and we're going to be consistently a great team. And we never really were, you know. So I was getting more frustrated. So when Zeus came in, it was sort of to me and JDM as well. I feel at least on him, he can speak for himself. But it felt like a second chance or a fresh start, you know, a new coach, new system. So JDM was quick to talk with Zeus about what he felt was the problem pro his commitment to the team. So Zeus were having a lot of talks with JDM, trying to make it easier for him in practice, trying to give ideas to JDM. You can go for a peek here and here and here, and you can like tell Jacob to stand ready with a flash here and here and here, and you can do a setup like this and this and this. And we really tried to work it with JDM, and I honestly also feel that he improved. It got better, you know, with Zeus in the beginning. But I feel JDM has for that half a year, Peacemaker was involved, and for that half year, Zeus was not involved in the team. I feel he really got drained a lot of confidence, you know, and he was really hitting rock bottom, you know, and to climb back from hitting rock bottom, that's probably going to take a while. So I don't know if JDM is getting better and better right now. It feels like Liquid are playing well. It feels like JDM is getting a little bit better now. But it felt like there was small improvements seen when Zeus arrived to the team, because he simply got to talk more with Zeus, and he got to dictate more of the game, I guess, because Zeus respected the fact that a great Orber has to be utilized, because he used to play with Fallen, right? So he understood that fully.
I've got a question. Yeah. So in the NA scene, one of the things that is always quite confusing to me is when you hear about all these problems, like in pretty much every single top NA team that I'm aware of for the last few years, always has these like personality conflicts. And the thing is, they're never like secret. Like people in the other teams all know this stuff. That's why actually, as much as it's a meme that, you know, like Tarek or whatever just goes on his stream and says all the secrets in the scene, like no, they say some, but like even then they kind of do usually pick which ones they reveal, you know? There's a lot of stuff that I'm always impressed that he doesn't get out. Like you should be professional and not let stuff get out. But why do you think that, like, coming from Europe, is it as bad in European teams that you've played for? Like is it as ridiculous, the conflicts with the players? Is it just different somehow? What is it? Because in that sense, I feel like I always just hear all these stories in NA, and it's like, at least just the way that I hear them, they just sound so terrible, the teammate conflicts, you know? I don't know how you resolve those.
Yeah, well, I can only speak of like, I've only played in Liquid, you know, and I don't, honestly, when I was in NA, I didn't really speak to many other players or many other NA people. Never really got any close friendships with C9 players or Uptick players or anything like that. I sort of like kept it for myself and just focused on Liquid. So I don't know, but it feels to me like where in Europe we can be aggressive towards each other, and I feel like we have just as much conflicts in European teams. Like all teams have conflicts, you know, and stuff to work with, but it just feels like the way we handle it in Europe are different. It feels more, at least from the impression I have from Liquid and what I hear around in NA, is that it feels more like in NA you're more passive aggressive with the conflicts. You know, you don't really, like, instead of just yelling at each other and getting it out and talk it through, you know, you kind of like you don't really say what you mean. You say something, you say half the truth, you know, but you never really burn out with your frustrations, where you just keep them for yourself, and it becomes sort of like passive aggressive answers and discussions all the time. And that, like, to me, that's way worse than actually just burning out and like speaking your mind and like rage out for a minute or two and then talk about it calmly, you know, instead of always being like having like the foot on the back pedal, you know, and always be like passive aggressive, because that's how it felt for me in Liquid, and that's how it feels that's my impression, at least on some of the other NA teams as well. That like they have their problems. All teams have their problems, but the way we handle it in Europe are just different and way more direct. Like we confront each other with the problems, and then we talk about it, and it's not always pretty, but at least it gets talked about, and people know what the other people, what the other guy you're having a conflict with actually means, you know, instead of you always has to guess what's the problem, and always has to second guess what is he mad about now, you know, I really don't know and he don't want to tell me, sort of situation, you know. And that's to me that's way worse than actually having like these heated arguments.
Yeah, Moses, I've got a great analogy for you. Well, not an anecdote for you. Okay, so there's actually an example of a scenario like this, where this just shows just like the extremes of how passive aggressive people can be. So normally if you wanted someone cut from a team, okay, true. Maybe some people, even in European teams, do it, a little bit sneaky. Like you wait until you know the player you want, and you wait until they've agreed, and then you tell the person, like, yeah, obviously we're gonna have to cut you, and this guy's coming in. Like you could make a case that even that's like a little bit dodgy, as opposed to just telling the person, we're having problems here, we're gonna look for options. But I think the ultimate one that no one will ever top is an NA example, right? And it was after CGS when we had the initial NA teams again, and at the time, Complexity actually had one of the better teams, and they had a guy playing for them who people back then will remember, an AWPer called Evolution. And the thing about this Complexity team was they actually did have a team house and a bunch of them lived in it. But this is how passive aggressive they were, right? Even though some of them were friends with this guy and presumably like roomed with him or something, they just told their coach, like, yeah, we need to cut this guy. So the coach just, like one day he was like in the house or something and like there's no one else there. And then the coach just comes in his room like, yeah, you've been removed. You're going to have to leave the house now. And obviously like you need to just have them to leave. They're all just there in the house as well. Like that's why it's so mad, right? It's the idea that they're all just like, oh, so sorry, bye. It's like, that is nuts, isn't it? You're literally in the same house with the person.
Especially because he's living there as well. Like, give him a little bit of time to pack his shit up and find some other arrangement. Why the fuck not? That sounds about right. I'm more like this is going to be, and feel free, Jacob, to say you don't really want to talk about it, but like, I always wonder like how the things that Hiko said about Elige, I know he got a bunch of flack after that, like, and I know Elige, I know some of the struggles they've had. Like, how accurate was that? Like, is that actually, when you have a player that like seemingly, from what the public knows, was like very, very difficult to work with as a teammate? One, was that actually true? And two, like, how much does it actually impact the team morale? Because obviously this ties into FNX with SK, with Immortals, the reasons he's been cut from his past two teams, like some of those personality clashes. What's the actual impact it's having like on a team dynamic?
Well, obviously, what Spencer said, there's some truth to it, and it was very difficult to work with John at some times. But so again, it was difficult to work with all of us. Like, it was difficult to work with Spencer on some areas. It was difficult to work with Nick on a lot of areas. JDM, myself, like we all had ours to work with. The thing about John and Elige is that he is very young, So to me, when I think about it, I don't really know like how much heat to give him, because a lot of the way I actually understand what he feels and what he thinks, because he is still 18 years old and he's not that experienced as for example Hiko and I am, despite me only being 21 years old. I feel I've been through a lot, So I understand what he thinks and I can see a lot of myself in him a lot of the times, So I guess that helps me to understand what he's going through. And also I want to say that like John was a pain in the ass sometimes, but he's also like, and that's something I respect a lot. Like, he knows it, he knows he has a problem and he's working on it, and that's really all you can expect from people. Like, you can't expect more than that. As long as you admit you have a problem and then work towards fixing it, then you can't expect more. Whatever that takes a month or that takes a year, that's up to each individual and how bad the problem is. But as long as he's working on it, then for me it's all good. And he did that throughout my Liquid period. He was aware that he had a problem and he started to work on it. And so did some other of us as well. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah. So I respect that.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Maybe this is where, like, cultural differences, like mistranslation. I feel like you tried to have that heart to heart, and you're like, listen, Elige, you're kind of like me, but when I was younger. And he's like, what, fat? And you're like, well, no, obviously not. And I mean, like an asshole. He's like, oh, thanks. Fuck you. Just like yeah. The problem is though, like, isn't that like kind of the coach's job to figure that stuff out? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And that's like one of my next points. Like, Zeus is actually one of the guys that's what I respect the most about Zeus. I think like he came into the team and he said straight away, all this passive aggressiveness shit, I don't want to be a part of it. Like, if you have a problem, you confront your teammate and we talk about it. That's why he's so, like, Zeus is also so hooked on Liquid, having like all players gathered in a team house, or at least having 1 to 2 boot camp a month, just so people don't get to hide away behind the monitors. Because we had a lot of like issues we never really got to talk about. It was like, if somebody tried to bring up something, if I tried to bring up a problem, like often it either got into a heated argument with the result in somebody just leaving TeamSpeak, before the argument was over, or something like some childish shit, but you don't get to do that when you're on site, when you look into the eyes of the guy you're having an argument with. And that's something Zeus values very, very much, and that's something he's trying to enforce on Liquid, and I think that's gonna probably be one of the keys for them to succeed, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It is tough to work with, and it's tough to play with. And if you have like personality issues on a team, which all teams have, like I don't believe you find a team where you have 5 guys who are just like in love with each other and just like don't have a bad word to say about any of them, because there'll all be something. But when it's as extreme as it was in some of the periods in Liquid, then you need somebody to take a hand around it. And I feel Zeus is trying to do that in Liquid right now. And that's like, honestly speaking, that's probably the only reason why I stayed in Liquid for as long as I did. That was because I felt Zeus really, like, he really tried, and he really, like, he got to me at least, and I got on the same boat as him, and we tried, but it didn't work out anyway, So, but I feel he's trying his best to fix some of the mentions issue that we just talked about.
Okay, Moses. So another issue we need to talk about is FNX leaving Immortals. And if you remember, actually, someone even linked me this, but that is literally basically what we talked with Zeus about when he was on the show. And Zeus's take on it was, because remember, I was, as someone who doesn't know those players personally, I was thinking to myself, maybe this is a good thing that you get FNX on the team, because obviously he's known to be like a very fiery, driven personality. Yep. And so I thought, right, since unfortunately I look at a lot of those other ones, and I think a lot of them, like, they kind of do have that, like, second best mentality in a way, because they know they're not going to be in SK and they're not going to be as good as SK. I thought, okay, maybe that'll fire them up. And Zeus actually said that he was concerned that actually it would be the other way around. Like, basically they wouldn't be able to handle his personality and that it would be too much. And it seems like FNX, they haven't literally said the reason, but it was implied by the coach and others, like, it's personality conflicts, which usually means, like, personality conflicts is code for these people cannot get along with this person's personality. So I don't know why, by the way, I'll just as an aside, I don't know why Immortals insisted on being like, this is a mutual agreement. He has chosen to step down, like, without getting into the whole details of that doesn't exist. That a mutual agreement is like this. It's like where I say, if you don't leave now, I'm going to punch your face in. You go, okay, I'll leave. It's like, well, that's not really mutual, is it? Like,
I mean, it's obviously obviously the way they phrase it to not have to release the details of exactly how much of a problem it was actually becoming. But yeah, it's it doesn't surprise me. It's hard to take that step down, right? As a player, like if you're used to winning championships, if you're used to playing with coldzera players that have the ability to do the things that like coldzera and Fallen had to do, and you go to the next level down, it's so difficult mentally to like be in that kind of a situation where all of a sudden you have to work with people much more. All of a sudden the players around you don't have the capabilities that you're used to. It makes your job harder where you have to step into it. And I imagine that's exactly where those conflicts arose, where he's thinking in his head, this is what you have to do. This is like he's trying to like make people do the things that like coldzera is able to do or Fur is able to do. And they don't have the players like that. They don't have that. So it's hard mentally as a player, I think, to make that step down to the second tier when you've been at the first tier for so long. And yeah, I mean, I imagine that's where all the conflicts arose. And yeah, I mean, obviously the mutual thing too is FNX probably went and is just like, I can't work with these players, and the players are like, yeah, we can't work with him as well. And that's probably the extent of how mutual things were. And yeah, I'm just surprised. Zeus obviously knows him very well, which just intimates that I think Zeus in SK probably had to deal with a lot of his personality issues during their major run and just knew it was going to crop up at some point. The fact that he had the foresight to say that wasn't going to work out is just, he knows exactly what they had to deal with in that team.
Because I mean, the bizarre thing about it was like the timing is what's a bit off from the outside, because like they only really had it. The only bad result they had was the Star Series one. Like, okay, fair enough, that wasn't great, but like they just finished second at DreamHack Austin. Obviously, before that, they had the Katowice run that was pretty good. Yeah, you would think you'd at least hang in there for the major, right? Like, that's why for anyone on the outside, most teams are going to wait till the major, even if maybe the lineup isn't ideal now and they should get someone. Yeah. It just logically doesn't make a lot of sense to make a kick now, because as you've seen, like for example in this case, they don't have like some sick player lineup. They're having to get some like Portuguese player in or something. So,
I mean, it's the other side of the coin, right? Where they're just like, we still have what, two months essentially, or a month and a half before like all this kind of kicks up. So let's see what we can do in that time period. At least get someone they can work with. Because I mean, the biggest struggle that you have with players when you have like a personality clash is, if you're playing a bomb site with him on the CT side or something, and he's not happy with how things are going, what you do is like kind of suggest some kind of a solution. It's like, all right, next scrim, let's try this instead. And it gets to a point where maybe, FNX is just like, no, I don't want to try that. Why don't you just fit to how I want to play it? And he's not willing to conform to your kind of ideas. And I think that's probably where most of the clashes occur, because he's just like, no, it should be done this way. I've won 2 majors, like I know this. And the other player's like, yeah, but I don't like to play like that. Can we try it this way? And obviously I don't have the inside information. It probably wasn't that friendly either. I made it sound very nice and pretty between 2 teammates, but things are much more heated than that. And yeah, it's just that's where it gets difficult for someone who's kind of stepped down to kind of acknowledge that he's going to be the one that has to concede ground. And if it's one player constantly conceding ground, and I know because I've been that player in teams who I'm always the one who's saying, yeah, I'll adjust to what you want to do. I'll do something I don't like for what you want to do. That's where it eventually gets to a point where you're just like, fuck you, dude. I'm tired of conceding everything for you. Like, where's your give? Why aren't you giving anything to this?
What do you think, Pimp?
I just like the last sentence was like, I felt the same in Liquid at some points, honestly. It gets frustrating, and it's so difficult to work with. And I had my like fair issues with that, and I had my talks with managers and Zeus about that. But literally that's how it has to be in Liquid, because that's like the players we had. I don't believe it's as sugar-coated as you made it mention, or as you made it sound, Moses, at all. Obviously it's not, you know that. That. It's probably some heated arguments, and knowing the Brazilians, I feel like it's probably been rough. Probably no fighting, I don't know, but it's been a heated argument, and I feel, at least from what I heard and what I know, like FNX is a guy who likes to maintain like some sort of like life besides gaming, which I totally understand and totally respect, and it doesn't seem like Immortals, or at least the other guys, is I don't know if they're not accepting that or not willing to that or open to that, but it can get too much to live in a gaming house and never feel you get like freedom to go out and do what you want to do, or like maintain some sort of like normal life besides playing. I can only imagine how hard it is for all the Brazilians to live away from home. Or maybe like the living standard is obviously different in America. I assume it's better than where they come from most of the places, without being disrespectful. But still, like, you're away from friends, you're away from your culture, you're away from what you know and what's familiar. So it's rough for all of them. And if you are a type that needs like some sort of like life balance, then I can only imagine how hard it must be for FNX, like, as Moses said, like to take in all these factors, like going from a major winning team to the second next level, and then giving in ground, and then still not feel that you're getting like space to live your life. Besides that, it must be frustrating. So that's my take on it. I don't know what's been said, what's been done. So it's tough.
I mean, that's what always people said before. Like, obviously, there was a while in CS where we never had gaming houses, and especially the NA teams, they only just started moving back towards that because, like, for example, like the Cloud9, he wants to like have like a culture in the team or something like that, and then Team Liquid, as you're saying, like the coach wants it, Optic obviously famously just does it for like the content and all these things. But the funny thing is, the reason why I always thought it was a positive that a lot of CS teams didn't have a team house is because I know that it like exacerbates any kind of personal problems you have, because you're around the person all the time, there's no kind of like break from it. And so I have to say, even if there wasn't, let's say there wasn't a ridiculous conflict between FNX and Immortals under normal circumstances, if you all have to live together and you're in a foreign country and there's only like basically the 5 of you and your manager or whatever, like that is a pretty intense situation. So any kind of problems are going to be magnified even further.
Yeah, and I mean that's the conversation that's what always happens. And if I had to guess with Evan X, and this is pure speculation, but I would guess they did have like some argument over giving something and changing his play style in some kind of a situation, and that's when things are said that like can't really be taken back, right? Where he's probably just like, yeah, but you suck. Like, why the fuck am I going to change my play style for you? He's like, you're not getting the kills. Like, why are we doing it this way? And like with the team house situation, I never liked the prospect. I mean, I basically do that kind of a lifestyle right now, and it's so difficult when you're somewhere for. I've been in Germany for 3 months. If you just want to get out and go find something to do, and you don't know anyone but the people you work with, it can be very, very difficult at times. And I say that with all of my colleagues sitting around me at the moment, so fuck them. But it's just like, yeah, it just never seems like the team house has worked in Counter-Strike very well. Like even when like the teams that were being successful doing it, I mean, you think, Duncan, about like the old Complexity lineup from 1.6 before CGS lived in a team house in Plano, Texas, and they maintained like at the top of the NA side of things for years. But even that, even if it's not like infighting within the team, what it turns into is like just like a den where you do far more social activity than you do actually practicing and working. Like then you get into the habit of where you're all sitting around playing FIFA, having a beer, ordering pizzas, and watching movies instead of like watching a devo, instead of practicing, because you incorporate too much life into where you're supposed to be working. So it's this very, very delicate balance that I don't think it works out very well. My
take has always been on it. Like, if we can talk about the gaming house stuff, like it's it's people expect like the expectations the owners and the teams have to the players are just like not like measured with reality, you know. For example, Zeus, like he's a very big fan of like having a team house, and he obviously comes from SK where it works for SK to live together, have a team house, and all that kind of stuff. And I can understand that because they all like leave Brazil, they all come to a different culture, to a new country, so they obviously want to be together as much as they can because they are the closest friends to each other that they have, you know, in the new country. So that makes sense, you know, to have a team house to build a new life, I guess, together in a new country, in a new house, you know. But for NA team or for like even a European team, you like to force players to live in a team house and remove the ability like to maintain a life is just not a good idea, because there's no doubt that like it works for SK because they're like the how to say, like the factors and like the aspects for them are different than like all other teams, you know. They all come from a country to a new one, and they move in and try to like build a new life, you know. So it works in their case, but it just because it works in SK's case doesn't mean that it can be translated to like a European gaming house or work for all other NA teams, you know. My take has always been on it, like it's the owners that like, obviously the wish scenario is that all players live in a gaming house, they commit their life 14 hours a day to play Counter-Strike, to watch demos, all that kind of stuff, but it's not realistic, you know. It might be realistic for the SK guys because they don't have much else to do, because again they moved from a country and they only have each other in this new country, you know. That's maybe why it works so well for them, but it doesn't translate into like working for just NA players who live like 5 different places in NA, or European players who live in 5 different countries close to each other. Like it doesn't measure. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like I much rather like the way that Astralis and Hero goes by it. They have a like office that they meet in like 2 or 3 times a week and play from there, and then they have like some home practice days as well, and then they are able to have a life in the weekends and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Well, if you'll remember as well, I think it was Astralis actually when they were still TSM and they were going through all the negotiations for that. Like TSM mentioned like wanting to buy them like a team house. Like that was one of the big discussions. Like buy you guys a house over in Denmark where you guys all live, and they wanted to like also pay for like a camera crew to like be at the house like for like 6 hours a day to record content and make content around the team. And it's like when your life becomes the content and your life becomes the team and the Counter-Strike, and you have no kind of escape from that, because outside of a camera crew, always having camera on them, no privacy to create YouTube videos, and then having to go into practice and then having to go into matches, you have no way to kind of release yourself from the stresses of being that kind of competitor, and you need that kind of a release. So I mean that's just one more thing. Those guys do it very well. And then obviously the easy ones to talk about are like girlfriends or friends, especially over in Europe where the team houses, you know, even if we stick to Astralis as like an example, you know, since everyone's from Denmark, the friends that they have in Denmark and they want to hang out with, you can't just invite like 3 people over for beers one night to watch the soccer match. All of a sudden you have like 10 people in the house. It's just not possible.
Okay. I thought you were going to go edgy there and go the Immortals route. Like, see, the problem is it's all about having access to people's girlfriend. I mean, your girlfriend.
Yeah, there's that as well. Isn't
there we go.
There it is.
There we go.
Nice.
Okay.
You're really pleased with that one, aren't you?
I know. I slipped it in there. Well, I mean, so did he, apparently.
Nice.
No, it is like the Timo is like expect too much from like obviously the perfect wish case scenario is that all the players like commit and love living in a gaming house, but that's just not the reality. And it's like they don't get that, you know, because they see it work for SK Gaming, so why doesn't it work for us, you know? And it's like they don't understand. And I've had talks with like the Liquid's owner myself and like other team owners, and it's like they just don't want to understand that we don't live in a perfect world. We can get as close to perfect as we can, you know, but if you don't want to accept that perfect is not an option, then you're already like lost right there.
But here's one of the problems though, Pimp. Like I totally agree with you, by the way, on the whole team house thing, and I've basically told loads and loads of the LCS type owners, like, it's just not the way it's done in Counter-Strike. And I think if you actually look at like the level of burnout in your game compared to ours, I think it kind of proves the point, you know. There's just way less burnout of top players in CSGO. But one thing I will give them credit for, which I think players often don't understand, is that the big flaw at the moment is basically part of the problem TSM had as well with that Danish lineup was that all this investment money was coming in, which wasn't in any way backed up by how much the teams can actually make now. So what was happening is all these people were bidding and outbidding you, and then people like TSM, okay, yeah, they're one of the biggest League of Legends organizations, but they make money off their League of Legends team, you know. They actually make, like, they know how to market it and how to do all the video stuff and how to do all the streaming, and that's a way to make lots of money back off the sponsors. So the big problem for people who are the LCS owners is they look at it like, okay, ignoring the part about the personality part, which is absolutely correct. Maybe they don't get that. It's that they are right that if you could have people under the same house and do lots of vlogs and videos and make sure they do their streaming, it would make the business better. So that it's like one of those problems where, like, I kind of feel for them because they probably thought to themselves, we're going to come in CSGO. They don't know. Actually, that's the thing. A lot of the European orgs don't know how to do a lot of this marketing and stuff, They haven't succeeded the same way. So I feel a bit bad for the LCS owners because they're not totally wrong. It's just that it's a different kind of culture,
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's why I believe that Astralis and Heroic and like the teams that like implement some sort of office where they have to be twice a week, for example, like that's I feel like that could be the middle ground. That might not be perfect either, but that's like they can create content 2 times a week, and that should be enough to maintain that business, and that should be like some sort of like balance that is edging out, and that's why I like the whole like having an office that you can go to, having an office you can go boot camping for a week if needed, as long as you're not like forced to stay in a gaming house. I hated it myself in the sense that when I was in LA with Liquid, my gaming house was my home. I didn't have anywhere else to stay or anywhere else to sleep. So it might have been different for me because I came from Denmark. But I would hate it if I were playing on a Danish team and I was forced to like live in a gaming house with 5 players when I knew I could like drive 2 hours and then be together with my friends after practice, for example. So that's not gonna work. I totally dig the whole Astralis Heroic thing where they force their players to be around their office. Like they want them to live in Copenhagen if possible. Right now, as far as I know, Subnix is the only guy who's not living in and around Copenhagen, or at least he's the only one who's not planning to, because he bought an apartment in the city I live in as well. So he's not forced to. So he just takes a plane like once or twice a week to Copenhagen, like a 45-minute plane, and then he meets up with the guys, and that's a way to work around it as well. It's not like a plane ticket is like crumbling the budget for Astralis at all, So I like the way they do it, and to me it seems like it works. So that's why I like have my focus towards in all this like gaming house, all this office, all this like boot camping facilities. It's a mess, but I feel they found some sort of middle ground right now.
Okay, so we have another topic that we need to discuss, which I think is a very, very tricky one, actually. I don't think anyone has the clear answer, so I want to get people's take on it, which is that Virtus.pro is back in relegation again in Pro League. Now, I realise there was all the, like, what should have been a non-existent scandal about a joke made by a caster, like that they were throwing games or whatever, right? Obviously not. That is a joke. But this is like one of the most ridiculous extremes I've seen. Because even though everyone knows I'm not a fan of online play, and I think some of the results can be a bit... It's not that they're meaningless, it's just that they're so different from what would happen on LAN. Like, an obvious example right now is Envious. So Envious qualified for the LAN finals, whereas when they're on LAN, Envious has won 1 map out of 8. And that was very narrowly. So, this is a team that's been very bad on LAN, but has done pretty well in Pro League, actually. So while there are extreme examples the other way, like, Moses, this is like literally, I looked it up. Virtus.pro have now failed to make 4 straight EPL finals. They only made it to the first one. And in fact, most seasons, if you go back and look, a lot of them are like this. It's like they're not even just like missing, by like a game and it comes down to that last tiebreaker, like a lot of people. They're missing by like, they're not making it like 3 weeks out from the end of the season. So it can't just be the whole thing of like, oh, they just don't care about the matches and they're not trying. There's got to be something else here. What do you, come on, Pimp, what do you think?
I mean, this is kind of tough. If I had to guess, if I had to just venture a guess at the moment, I think part of it is, and it's tough because they have like a historical trend of doing this, but I would have to guess that part of the reason why they're not so focused this season is, I mean, just Pasha had a baby. Taz has now just had a baby at the beginning of the year. I think they're just focusing on other things at the moment. I think it's more of a life thing that they're doing. And with the schedule online, I mean, I know this is going to be a little bit of a cop out, but like you can't possibly care about every single match. It's just not going to work, and you can't possibly improve on everything at all times. And I think VP, just especially to start this year, just wasn't focused on Counter-Strike. Yeah, I know they had that great run, but it was very obvious. I mean, Taz had the baby and then flew to China like the next day for WSG. And then the next week went to the major, and then the next week went to Vegas. And then once he got back from Vegas, it's like they don't have anything scheduled, right? They had nothing lined up. So that was like family time. That was like, settle down and kind of build that kind of part of your life up a little bit. And just, it's just so confusing. What's more confusing isn't that they're like not qualifying. It's like the level of play from the individual players is just so bad. And you can understand that from a guy like Taz. It's where it comes into a guy like Snacks, Like Snacks is one of like the top 5, top 3, probably the best player of the start to this year, and then he just drops off online. So does Bialy. So I think it literally just is something where they just look at online games and just don't care. That's like really the only explanation I kind of have for it. They've been playing online games for over a decade now, and they've always gone to LAN after playing online leagues and struggling and losing to all the online teams. And I think they've just gotten to the point where they're just so jaded about online play that they just can't possibly work up the motivation to care, to be frank.
What are your thoughts, Pimp?
I agree with most of what Moses said. Like I feel like it's got to a point, as Moses said, where like they just don't care as much anymore, you know, and that's dangerous because obviously they do have to care about ESL Pro League. But as Moses also said, like it's fully understandable that like if I were in a position, if I were in VP shoes, you know, they're earning great money, you know. They have what is it, 5-year, 3-year long contract, you know. They know they're safe, you know. So if Virtus.pro is okay with them like picking and choosing when to peak and when to be in form, which it feels to me like they are able to do almost all the times, you know. Even if you fail sometimes, if you pick like, let's say you go to the next major and like, okay, we choose this as our main target and we don't deliver, you know, that's a one-off case. But it seems like Virtus.pro always manages to deliver when they want to, you know, and if they can do that consistently, and if the VP are okay with that, then I understand VP and the players on VP choosing not to care too much about the online play. Obviously, they're not happy about losing. You know, they're probably like frustrated as well, and they want to win every single game. But then again, like if they're okay with just doing well at big events and getting the praise for that, then I'm sure that's like it's playing into their mind. It's playing into like, okay, Snacks is not like sitting down and taking that extra hour of that match, and they're not like having that extra day of practice or that extra game on each practice day that it requires, you know, to be there. And I think that's a choice they made, you know. They're not open about it and not really talking about it, because I can see, like, from a business perspective as well, it's rough to say that, okay, we don't care about this league as much as we care about like X and X event, you know. That's dangerous to go out in public and say, but I really do believe, and I really do understand if that is the case, that they just simply sit down, they look at the schedule, and they choose this and this and this event. We want to be good, you know. And if we could be good at those events and just be decent, or just like make it by Pro League, or just do whatever, like I think that's fair, and I think that's it's just unique in their approach, you know. Because as Moses said, like you can't care about all online games, but in fact, like all teams that I know, like every single Danish team, every single European teams, they care about every single online game as was it like a LAN match, you know, because they want to win it all. But that's dangerous as well, I believe. So it's two extremes in each direction. I feel like if there was like some middle ground between that as well, then that would probably work out for teams as well.
Because the problem I have with that concept is, like, okay, you are right. If somehow, like, Virtus.pro, ES Force, whoever it is, literally told them, you know, privately, obviously, not publicly, like, okay, it's not the end of the world if you don't do well in Pro League, you know, like, just play the matches and just do well at the tournament, right? If that was true, yeah, maybe it's not as big a deal from their point of view. I mean, it's still not good for the fans and everyone else, you know, like, we can't know that. But the big problem I have with that as a concept is, essentially, to make that work, you'd have to be just incredibly rich and not care about certain results. Like, that's the part I'm not buying, because I know, like I told you just there about the NA teams, etc. Part of what I'm kind of saying about why they want streaming and want vlogs is they want exposure. That's how they make their money from their sponsors. It's like, right, look, I can commit to, you've got these many, like, for example, you know this, Moses, at the moment, if you want to buy an NA lineup, you pay more if you want the slot or if you don't. Like, that's actually a real thing. Because if you have Pro League, now you can go to your sponsors and go, right, you know, we're going to have, I can't remember how many games it is, 50 games a season, and you know, it's going to be this many hours on camera on the primary Twitch stream with this many viewers. Those are real metrics you can sell sponsors on. So if that's really the case that they don't have that, okay, that seems a bit extreme though, because my problem is this wouldn't be an issue if it was the same scenario, but they had just finished like 8th every season. They don't make the offline finals, but they're always in Pro League, and therefore they maintain the exposure. But remember, they're in relegation for the second straight time. They might not even be in Pro League. And I have to say two things. One, they shouldn't even be in Pro League right now. The way that ESL did that magical thing to get them back in last time was bullshit, and they only did it because it's Virtus.pro. I don't care what anyone from ESL says. That is a disgrace. And here's the reason why it's a disgrace. Because if Virtus.pro had been relegated, I'll tell you right now, this will happen now if they get relegated. They won't make it back in. Like, everyone who thinks it's a joke to play online, right? Yeah, it's really tough to play the EPL teams online. try going into those massive online qualifiers to get to lands. Someone will beat you. And by the way, it'll be like the EFRAG guys or some team from fucking that you've never heard of. You will get beaten eventually. So I know from when like LDLC was beating fucking Godsent and all these other teams that had Flusher and JW on, like it's fucking tough down in Premier, mate. You don't want to mess around with that. So I don't think they're coming back if they get relegated, mate.
That's the best part about this, Duncan, is if they get relegated, they're still going to get invites to all the big events.
Sure, you're right.
They're still going to get the invites, which is going to just be, I think it's going to be fucking awesome, because that's just going to be like, yeah, that's going to be like an admission that online leagues really don't matter as much as we'd like them to. Because if you're not even in the online leagues and you're still getting invited because you're Virtus.pro, because you can still beat the best teams, because you have a massive fucking fan base that's going to tune in to watch you, you're still going to get that invite because you're still massive value despite not playing in the online leagues. I think that's going to be hilarious how that all works out. Because I guarantee no matter what VP looks like online, there is going to be, I mean, everyone wants to see VP at tournaments. Everyone. I don't care how disappointed you are in their online results. I still want to see VP. Sadicus still wants to see VP at events. I mean, it's
Is he the extreme example? Is he?
He's the extreme example. but I mean, that's the thing. Like if let's say Big qualifies over VP for Pro League, there's no way that Big gets invited to like ESL 1 Cologne over a Virtus.pro. It just doesn't happen. So, I mean... What's the point? That's probably the way VP looks at it, where it's like, and yeah, ESL can't possibly expand the vote to get them back in or anything, or expand the league to get them an extra slot. Yeah.
Never say never, Moses.
No, that won't happen. That's out. That's like if they do that again, that's just game over, isn't it? It's just that's not even masking the issue.
They did it once, so why not twice? No, but honestly, I think it's very like, at least from a player perspective, I think it's important to mention out that I don't think VP at all has like sat down and like had that mentality going from the beginning. Okay. You know, I think it's something that involved like throughout like the first, like you said, they qualified for the first season, I believe, right? And they might have struggled in the second and didn't make it. And then like it's like a mentality that involves like throughout season 3, season 4, and now season 5 or what it is, right? It's like they don't sit down and choose like, okay, we're not gonna do well in this league. Obviously, we're gonna do as well as we can. But it's just the mentality that they like. It's sort of like involved, you know. And as I said, like I can only imagine that VP in the beginning haven't been happy about that, you know. They've probably been pushing them on and said like, why are you performing here, and what are you doing, and what's the problem? And like I know Liquid is doing that as well, not in a mean way and in a like threatening way. It's more like, why are you not performing, and what do we have to do in order to make you perform? Whereas VP might have like had conversations with them and they said, this is why and why and why. We have like a kid coming here, we have a kid coming here, we have like life commitments here and here and here, so you better be okay with us not like trying our 100% in this and this scenario, you know. And I think VP has just like come to a conclusion or to a understanding with both the organization and the players where that's okay, and I can dig with that, honestly.
And I also imagine if you look at the schedule that VP has had, they haven't had like an event to go to since Vegas. I think Vegas was the last one they were at. So I mean, if you look at that,
they were at Star Series.
Oh yeah, they were.
And kind of Vitesse. I know you didn't notice it because they weren't in the playoffs.
Holy shit!
But they were at those tournament Moses. Yeah.
Okay, well, since those tournaments, they've had about 2 months off until they go to Cologne.
Yes.
So they look at the schedule and they're like, why would we have this intense practice schedule trying to get back into shape? Why would we have this kind of? Why would we do it for 2 months? You know, why not just spend like 3 weeks?
Do you want a good reason? Do you want a good reason as to why you might do that? $25,000 a month. So Moses, average salary for a man in Poland, it's around $1,000. I make 25 times that in a month. Oh, sorry guys, I can't really come into work today. I need to play with my kids. I still get the $25,000 a month, more than everyone in my whole fucking country, though. Yep. Okay.
But honestly, that's not a reason for you to give up your life. You know, money is not more important than like.
Wait a minute, you're not giving up your whole life, though, are you?
You are. Like if you want.
You're not playing 9 hours a day.
What? Yeah, but like some players are, like if some kids right now are playing 14 hours a day, they're like literally doing nothing else than playing, you know. They like cut all the social commitments. They cut all like I know histories about players that haven't been to like a fucking family birthday for ages because they just want to play Counter-Strike every single day for 14 hours a day, you know. And if you're not a type of guy, like I can totally understand a guy like Tess who's 29 years old right now. Like he obviously doesn't want to live that life, you know, but he still want to play and he still want to like go to Cologne. He still want to go to majors and be the best, and he still needs to get paid his value to do that, you know. So
Pimp, you don't have to practice more than everyone else to win online games against LDLC in Pro League. Come on, this is too extreme, you know. Like it's an excuse, but it doesn't count for everything.
Maybe you have.
Yeah, but I think also if you look at Virtus.pro with the popularity they have in Poland, their value isn't just in playing games. Like that, some of that $25,000 is the brand value that they have in that country, and the draw that they can have when they stream, the draw they can have if they go and spend one day doing a promotional event instead of practicing for 8 hours a day and doing the matches. I mean, they own Poland in the sense that like, you know, they are all the advertisement of Poland. That those brands of the individual players. Pasha is definitely worth $25,000, even if they're losing every single EPL match in the world. His draw as an individual is insane.
So what you're saying is Pasha is the Polish Shroud. Moses 2017.
Yeah, why not, Duncan?
There we go. Okay. It's a good point. Yeah, there's something to that. By the way, one thing I don't deny is that I'm arguing from the point of view of like, it's a different way to look at the same problem. Like, for example, if I was that guy, yes, I would try to spend more time with my kids. I wouldn't practice as much as, you know, the guy who has no life outside of gaming. But I would also think to myself, how many years can you make this much money per month? Like, let's also balance it out so that we can still make that money and get back. Now, I do realize one point that you've both made, which is true, which is that actually it seems very unlikely that will affect this income. So in that sense, they don't lose the income by not doing it. But that seems like a very special circumstance. You know, I don't think many teams could survive that.
Yeah, well, I think one other thing that we also have failed to mention right now is the fact that Virtus.pro is owned by ES Force, and the fact that ES Force owns all like the marketing and all the television broadcasting rights over in that region. I get nervous every time
someone says that word out loud. You know
what?
The Voldemort company name.
Oh.
Every time you say it, there's a risk, Moses.
No, but I mean, no, this isn't a bad thing. But like, since they own basically everything, like every aspect of the market in that region, they can pump as much exposure for that team and those players as they want. They don't have to rely on like some third party to pick up a story or third party to kind of talk about how this team is doing. Even if that team is failing in the league, they can still pump as much marketing and have whatever kind of spin or go whatever direction they want in the region. So I mean, they're still not losing any kind of marketing angle with the team playing poorly.
But that's the thing, like VP is such a unique case, both in the way they're owned by that company, you know, and also in the mentality. Because what is it? VP has had the same lineup for, is it 3 years now or something? I don't know. Like that would never happen on a Danish lineup. Even if a Danish lineup would like try to enforce the mentality that, okay, we can live with having a 2-month period where we're gonna suck or be worse than we normally are. For example, in the ESL Pro League, and we're gonna lose games that we wouldn't want to lose. Like that would eventually lead to people want to kick each other, and one guy thinking to himself, okay, I'm not okay with being bad, you know, so I'm gonna play 10 hours a day, while the other guy who's trying to build the mentality that, okay, it's okay if I'm not good now, but I am in 2 months, you know, he's only playing 2 hours a day. That'll like conflicts in between the teams and all that kind of stuff. They will just lead to kicks and like massive internal struggles, you know. Whereas VP, it seems like it seems like those 5 players have found some common ground, you know. That's unique, you know. I don't think you find that in any other team, and I don't think you're going to see that in any other team, at least not the upcoming years, you know. It's such a unique case to me that it's fun talking about, but it's not really worth applying to any other teams because it's just unique, you know.
Much like the top 10 standings, you just said VP to the side, and you say this team can be number 1 or this team can be number 20 at any one time. They're their own little unique case. Special, we call them.
Moses calls VP special. Apology at 9 p.m. When I said that, I was a fan of Virtus.pro for many years. Okay, Moses, let me ask you this though. Right, it's okay for Thorin, the Edge Master, to say that online play means nothing. Like, even when Envious makes it to Pro League, I'm not like, congratulations. I'm like, this just proves that we should need to shut down online play and you should never be allowed to succeed. You are trash. Like, it's okay for me to say that. I mean, it barely is, by the way. I'm just getting away with it just about. But why are you taking such a harsh stance on it, Moses? You literally cast Pro League. Like, surely to some degree you care about online play.
Yeah, I mean, online play is I think at this point it shows like trends, right? I don't think of it as like the definitive thing. If like you used online results, you're obviously going to have a really bad time when it comes to a tournament. I think it shows more trends in what teams are working on. And also I think at this point we all just have to come to realize that it's kind of a necessary evil for the business side of things. I think ideally
EPL is evil. Moses 2017. Keep going.
No, but it is something where the amount of content that it produces, like the number of minutes, the number of hours that you're on screen, is easy for the leagues to sell sponsors on that, because you can't just say, oh yeah, give us $500,000, and we will have a 1 weekend event that will be watched by this many people, and then it'll be done, and that's worth it. And it's not worth it in that sense. But if you can say over the course of 4 months, we're going to have this many minutes of content where your logo is going to be visible to this number average of viewers, I think that's important for the leagues to be able to do that. I mean, ideally, we're eventually building to the point where, and I know there's already been discussions, is where teams can play these on LAN, but at the moment that's not sustainable. Where you can have an entire season that's done on LAN, whether it's teams have home and away games where you do it at somewhere in Denmark and then somewhere in Poland for the next game, or you fly everyone to the centralized studio location and do it there every week. We're not there in terms of how much money that costs. The only reason E-League can do it is obviously because they're owned by Turner, and that's like they print money. But I mean, also at the point where you have to get teams to buy into that, because that is players' time, that is travel, that is away from home. At the moment, even if EPL went and said, we have every week we're going to have a hot match of the week, right? And every week we're just going to fly these two teams in to play all their matches from the studio. We'll have them in studio to record content, to have extra features for the hot match of the week broadcast, whatever it might be. Even then, players are going to say fuck off, because they have tournaments over the weekends. There's not a set schedule. They have other leagues they have to play in, and that's just kind of too much. So you don't. Not only is it the money aspect, but you don't have players to be buying into that. So at the moment, the online league is kind of just like the best solution. The issue at the moment is there's just too many of them. It's not that it's an online league in itself, it's that there's too many. It's, you're playing in ECS, you're playing in EPL, you're traveling to an event, you're traveling to a qualifier, you're getting back on the day you travel, and there's no time for innovation. There's no time to practice. There's no time to fix mistakes. We're seeing more and more individual slumps because of this time. There's no time to have a real life. So in that sense, I think online leagues are just kind of annoying at the moment. We haven't figured it out, right? I think they'd be good if the schedule was a little bit more set. I think we'd be able to take away more from an online league if the schedule was a little bit more set. But at the moment, it's just kind of an inconvenience to both players, to even commentators at time. And I mean, it's just kind of something that we all have to suck it up and bear through until decisions are made. And I think that's going to happen soon enough, I would imagine. I think that's going to have to be decided by teams where they say, I think eventually we're going to get to a point where teams just going to say we're playing in EPL or we're playing in ECS. I think that'll be eventually what it gets to at some point.
It's just like you go on. Sorry.
Here's just as a small aside, though, one thing that you have to always bear in mind is not only for the guys who are in the org is it good to have the exposure. Like I've said, the number of hours of games you play. Even if you come last place, you play all those games. But even if you're players, dude, it's pretty crazy that coming 7th place in one of the ECS divisions gets you $27,000 just for playing online.
Yep.
That's actually legit money.
By the way, I mean, this is one reason why we've always hated online play, is just because of the amount of players who are players and teams that are just so good online, and it's just a vast majority of them are bad on LAN. I've been hearing stories about ECS that the players don't want anti-cheat used. Players are actively saying we don't want to run the anti-cheat client.
Oh God!
No one is going to cheat in the pro league. No one is going to risk
Dan
it.
M is all over this shit.
I know, but how mad is that?
I bet they do. Yeah, I bet you do, Bialy. I bet you want that fucking anti-cheat off, don't you? Okay.
How fucking insane is it that players are saying we don't want an anti-cheat run because no one do they realize? And they don't even want it in FPL. Do you know how many people would cheat to just get the opportunity of being in it? Cheat until you get good enough, you get noticed, signed to a contract, and then you stop cheating. But you have a 6-month contract where you're making $10,000 a month or some shit like that.
That's I've never heard about that, but that's stupid if that's the case. Probably is, right? But it's just to me, it's online is fun for a player as well. It would suck, honestly, if there was no online competition. I know you brought up a lot of good points, and I know the whole oversaturation thing has been talked about, and I definitely follow all of those aspects and all of those arguments. But still, wouldn't it be fucking boring without online upsets? Wouldn't it be fucking boring if we didn't have an NVS who arguably are gonna suck at Dallas and probably place last, but still edge out Astralis, it gives you Thorin something to talk about and something to rant about on Twitter, it would be, to me, honestly, it would be boring without those storylines, And yes, I agree. There is too many matches right now, and it's a constant evolving business plan or business model that constantly is evolving. And we might see as you said, a hot match of the week and whatnot. And we might see in a few seasons from now, it's not going to be every team plays each other twice, every team only plays each other once or something like that. It's constantly evolving, and I believe ESL and ECS and all the organizers are constantly looking into ideas and other ways to do it, while they still have to make money and still have to sell sponsors, right? But online play is, to me, I would be sad, if we didn't have a match or two a week. play for, because it also gives you motivation when you practice, because practice is, whether you want it or not, it's incredibly boring from time to time if you don't have a big event leading up to practice. So you drag your motivation in your, for an example, this 2-month period. If I was on a team who knew I'm not going to an event for the next 2 months, the only thing I have is Pro League. If Pro League was taken away from me, or if Pro League wasn't as meaningful to my team as it is to a lot of teams right now, that would just make the practice for those 2 months even worse, and it would give me even less motivation to suck up those 2 months of practice, So it also gives motivation to players. It also makes players play more, and by that makes the level of and the competition higher when we then get to the majors where people even suck it up more, So it's a constant balance that has to be found out, and we're probably never gonna find a perfect method, but it's constantly evolving, So I would just be sad if it were down to something only playing matches online, only getting flight in in weekends and playing your matches from that, because that would take out too much fun, and you probably wouldn't have too much to rant about on Twitter as well, So it's there's a balance. Point being,
bringing up the important things, Duncan's rants on Twitter.
That's very important to the scene.
Yeah, that is huge.
Well, you need something to talk about, right?
I do, yeah. If it wasn't me to provoke that controversy, mate, how many times you go to the CSGO subreddit and there's just that, whatever my Twitter avatar is just up there on the front page, oh, there's the discussion today, right, let's go in there, let's see what's in there. That's one of the things, by the way, Moses, as a small aside, that I'm actually a little bit sad about in League of Legends, because they used to allow that, where you could put tweets from pros. I'm actually one of the people who broke that, because I just did so many tweets that eventually they were the whole front page can't just be tweets that people have been saying, and so they deleted that. You can't put tweets on there anymore. R.I.P. It's okay. I found CSGO. It's all working out. So Moses, basically what Pimp was trying to tell you there. It's a lesson you should really think about and learn, because you're going way too far the other way. Is that only Siths deal in absolute. You've got to find balance to the force of life, Moses. You've got to find a way to embrace all colours of the force, and then in doing so, achieve harmony.
How does that apply to what I said?
Because you were going too far the other way. You were maybe we need to just play all these online leagues offline, or maybe we need to only have one online league, No. I think the players would jump. If you look at how much the players loved E-League season, I think all of them would love to fucking do that. Come in for a week, play your matches, or come in and play your matches on LAN. The issue is you can't do something like that when you have 2 other online leagues going on at the same time. I think the obvious solution that I think would have been fucking epic if it ever happened, I think it's kind of impossible to have occurred, but there's probably some chances, is if EPL had combined with E-League instead of FACEIT and said, let's just do EPL and use the Turner resources to have the entire Pro League season on LAN in Turner Studios, use their whole production, their studio, their money to fund the entire thing from a LAN environment. And then ESL has all the infrastructure, has all the people provided. They can use their production team to make supplementary content at the same time, deal with a lot of the online stuff, and you make just a fucking badass league in that sense. I think that would have been the fucking dream. And I think players would jump at that even without online games.
Thing is, it will also etch out the difference between we talked about online play is needed in order to scout new teams and find new teams, in order to qualify for events, and let's say that all the top teams never had to go through that, never had to go through online paces. Let's say if a team let's say Astralis, for an example, let's say they get into a slump again, they start to perform poorly, and they're at a state right now, where they've been used to not playing online at all for half a year because everything is just online, that's how it works. And then they drop to a level where they're not getting invited to those events anymore, and they have to go through this online pace and go back into that. There has to be some sort of smooth overlaps between online and LAN events, where you kind of get sucked into it a little by little. That's how it works right now with DreamHack, for example, where DreamHack is hosting all those online qualifiers, and the top teams are not going to DreamHack anymore, at least not the very, very top teams. So they're not stacked. Stops, yeah. Exactly. So the teams get to get a little bit of taste and then go back to the online hell, stay there for a while and then get a little taste of DreamHack again. And then if they're good enough, they are going to evolve into getting invited to E-League and all that kind of stuff, which is what I find very fascinating and very motivating for teams that are not on the very, very top right now. That's also that's making the whole scene and the whole competitive like the whole competitiveness around the scene much more competitive.
I mean, you obviously need online leagues for like the premier divisions and the second tier, and like the process to get up to the point where you're playing at the LAN events and everything like that. And that's actually, I think it's really cool. I think DreamHack has done a very good job of making DreamHack Open like essentially that stop for the best of the tier 2 teams. It's where teams can get noticed, players can get noticed. It provides a good platform for that, and I think that's a very important part of the structure that Counter-Strike has lacked for a long time. I think DreamHack's done a very, very good job providing that. Just because if you don't have that process, if you don't have that tournaments that can funnel the tier 2 teams towards like improving and towards competing with tier 1, then nothing ever changes, and you won't have that. So that's a really cool structure that they've set up with those open stops, and they get all the tier 1 North American teams.
Moses has to go and do Pro League now. So do you have a final statement, Pimp, at the end of this episode?
Not at all.
Hey guys, it's Fifth Lauren, also known as 944. Don't forget Thorin's YouTube channel.
What up guys, this is Jordan Nelson Gilbert and
Hello guys, this is Gabriel Fallen, player from Escape Gaming.
Salut les gars, c'est Shox de G2.
Hey guys, this is Spencer Rico Martin.
We work with some of the world's top pros to teach you how to take your game to the next level with constantly updated training content. When you're done watching and want to train or warm up, just a few clicks will put you in your favorite training mods like Deathmatch. But why warm up for a match on Mirage by getting shot in the back on Dust 2? That's why we built Duels. Real fights on real maps. 1 minute in Duels is like 20 rounds of real CS. The best way to train and warm up. Exclusively available on Boomeo.com.